professional associations, 35% from consultants, and most of you are joining us on the computer only today, about 67% of you. I would remind those of you who are joining us by both computer and phone to make sure that you do mute your speakers on your computer so that you don't have any feedback issues. And for those of you joining us by computer only, if you do have any audio issues today, we would ask you to call in. Sometimes the audio issues are just due to the internet connection. And you can find the phone number in the top left-hand corner of your screen. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and move us over to our presentation. A few logistics to run through for today's webinar. It will be an hour and a half long, and as always, it will be recorded and archived in our website. It will be available in about a week. For quality of the recording, we have muted everyone's phones during the presentation. If you are listening on the phone, again, please make sure that you do mute your computers, otherwise you will hear some feedback. There will be a few graphics and figures in today's presentation. If you would like to see them maximized to full screen, you can use the 4 arrows that press outward or point outward in the top right-hand corner of your screen. This will get rid of all of the rest of the information for the webinar, so it'll get rid of the attendee box and the chat box and the handout pod so that you can see the presentation itself a little bit bigger. At the end of each of our sections today, which there will be 3, we will have question and answer period. However, you can feel free to put your questions in the chat pod on the left-hand side at any time. When we do stop for a question and answer period, I will read all of those questions out to the presenters, so you can go ahead and make sure that you put them in as you're thinking of your questions. You don't have to wait until we do reach that question and answer stopping point. Also at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen is a handout pod. Here you'll find a few different handouts that the speakers felt would be relevant to you, as well as the PDF of the PowerPoint presentation for today. All 4 of those handouts will also be available for download on our website once the streaming link is posted as well. For those of you who were joining us in a group, in a classroom, please send the names and emails of everyone who's joining you to info@ruralsafetycenter.org, and we'll ensure that they receive the survey for today's webinar. That survey that will come out directly following today's webinar is the only way to request CEUs and certificates of completion for today's webinar. These surveys are vital for us to assess our webinar quality. There will be 2 of them. The first one, as I mentioned, will come out directly following today's webinar. In some cases, however, that survey does get stuck in your junk mailbox, so I have put it up on the screen right now in case you would like to take that link. It also is available, as I mentioned, in the PDF version of the handout pod. And that is how you would go ahead and request your CEUs and certificates of completion. It also gives us some information about the presenters themselves and the topic and what you learned. In about 3 months, you will receive a second survey that will be much shorter, only 5 questions, and that one is looking to figure out what you may have done with today's information. Perhaps you forwarded along the idea of putting together a safety plan for aging road users, or you took Florida's suggestion to create some brochures. So we're looking to see what you did with the information that you gained from today. When we do send out your certificates and CEU forms, please make sure that you return those CEU forms to continuinged@montana.edu and not to the Safety Center. Those are run by a different department within Montana State University. And when you do receive those, you can also request from them a verification of completion form. This will allow you to know which of our webinars you have received CEUs from. The survey that we provide will close 2 weeks after the webinar, so you can expect your certificates and CEUs to be provided to you 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a little bit longer than that after the webinar. We have had 3 webinars in a very short amount of time right now, so we are a little bit behind on creating those certificates as they are all manually created, but we will definitely send them out to you. On your screen right now, you can see the course registration form at the top left, which is what you will fill out. and provide back to Montana State University. And on the bottom right, you can see what the verification and completion form will look like if you do request it. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about our presenters for today. Our first presenter is Pam Beer from the Safety Center and from Cambridge Systematics. Ms. Beer has been involved as a project manager or key staff in the development, implementation, update, and evaluation each of 20 strategic highway safety plans, where Cambridge Systematics was the lead consultant. For Florida Department of Transportation, she has developed a logo and branding for the agency's Aging Road User Program, which you'll hear about today, as well as a series of outreach materials. In addition, she worked with the Safety Mobility for Life Coalition to develop the current Aging Road User Strategic Safety Plan and helped to develop the current Safe and Mobile Seniors website. Recently, she assisted with an update of this plan, and she's been working with Iowa Department of Transportation and the Oregon Department of Motor Vehicles to develop similar comprehensive websites for older drivers. Then we will have Gail Holley from Florida Department of Transportation. Gail works in the State Traffic Engineering and Operations Office, where she manages their statewide Aging Road User Program, Safe Mobility for Life. In this role, she leads a statewide coalition consisting of 27-member organizations as they develop resources to implement Florida's Aging Road User Strategic Safety Plan. The coalition takes a positive and innovative approach to strike a balance between safety and mobility to help Floridians maintain independence and remain active in their community even after they transition from driving. And last but not least, we'll have Bruce Hamilton from the Roadway Safety Foundation. He is the Director of Safety and Research Programs at Roadway Safety Foundation, a nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C., dedicated to advancing the hard side of highway safety, roadway design, roadside environment, and operating conditions. This is his second stint at Roadway Safety Foundation. In between, he served as the Communications Manager at the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety. Bruce oversees the Roadway Safety Foundation's support of the U.S. Road Assessment Program and other initiatives. He is also pursuing a Master of Public Health at the George Washington University's Milken Institute. So I do welcome all of our speakers today, and we are very glad to have you with us. The goal for this webinar, once you've completed the webinar, you will understand the safety needs, challenges, and countermeasures for the rural aging road user. The webinar will begin with an overview, continue with a case study from Florida DOT, and finish with an explanation of the Chorus website. To achieve this webinar goal, you will learn to understand the nature and extent of the aging road user population, to summarize Florida DOT's Aging Road User Program approach and implementation strategies, and to restate the resources available in the clearinghouse for older road user safety. And now I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Pam.
Thanks, Jamie. My role in this webinar is really to describe what is the nature and extent of the aging road user population out there and what we're facing as safety professionals. According to the census in 2015, there were nearly 50 million people, or 15% of the population, that were 65 and older. According to them, by 2060, this population is expected to increase to nearly a quarter of all people in the United States. And one thing that's interesting about this is it's not just states where it's always sunny and warm, like in Florida or California or Arizona. You know, aging people are living wherever. For instance, Alaska, which, you know, obviously gets a lot of snow and cold weather, their population of aging road users is about 11%. So what we're tending to do as we age is we're staying where we are. We want to be near family often, or our friends, or places that are familiar. So it's not just a problem that affects one state. One of the more interesting things is, however, that in the next 4 years, what's going to happen is that the people who are 65 and older are going to be more than the people that are under 5 for the first time in our history. All of this really does have a huge impact on how we deal with safety on our roadways. Most of the people who are now 65 and older are part of that baby boom generation. We look at driving much differently than our predecessors did. You know, for us, the car was always a matter of freedom. It was ability to get out, to go places, and we will be driving much longer than anyone else has before. Some of the facts about this population is we are safe drivers. We tend to buckle up. We don't drink and drive. We observe speed limits by and large, and we will self-select the best times to drive. For instance, if you're ever out around noontime in a community, you often find a lot of people who are 65 and older driving because they don't like to do it during rush hour when it's so crowded. We like to drive in the day. It's hard oftentimes for people who are older to see at night, so we tend to do it during the day. And we tend to stick to familiar areas and routes. That's the good news. The bad news is because we are older, our bodies are much more fragile. It is much more likely that if there is a crash, even in not something that's very serious, we can be severely injured or even killed. We also suffer from medical conditions that can impact driving, like a heart condition where you might have a heart attack, or diabetes where you might be driving and be affected by low blood sugar, and that will affect your ability to safely operate a car. And also, except for teenagers, we have the highest crash rate per mile driven, even though we tend to drive fewer miles. So again, all of that comes back to how is that going to impact how we deal with this population as we move forward. When it comes to aging, it's not like you reach a certain age and all of a sudden, you know, things start to go bad. I mean, aging affects people differently. Some people will be able to do things well into their 70s, maybe even 80s, and other people it will affect them at a much earlier age. So there's not one point where we say, okay, this is not the point where you should be driving. You know, you should stop at this age. It isn't like that. But regardless, aging does impact all of us in some way. The first change is vision. You know, our eyesight changes. We just don't see as well. It's harder when we look out to see people or even movement. It takes much longer to read signs. Oftentimes we have some difficulty recognizing familiar places. And when you drive at night, the glare from the headlights really affects this population much more than anybody else. We suffer from eye diseases that impact vision, like glaucoma and cataracts. And we require a lot more light to distinguish roadway features. That's why sometimes older folks will run off the road. Aging impacts cognitive abilities. People who are older will become distracted or disoriented more so than anybody who is younger. There's a slower response time, so when we see a sign or a signal or a marking on the road, we don't tend to react as fast. It's hard for older people to maintain control when driving over long distances for long periods of time. And one of the biggest problems is the older you get, you have a difficulty in judging time and distance when there's an approaching vehicle. That's why we see lots of left turn crashes. They just don't judge that very well anymore. It can be a delayed reaction to other vehicles or pedestrians, bicycles, other things in the roadway. Sometimes we'll get confused and improperly use the control. And if things, as we do get older and older and maybe even start suffering from a little dementia, we can become lost and confused. But again, this doesn't happen at a certain age, and in some people, none of these things will happen, or at least the majority of them. The last is physical. Our physical abilities do decrease, and as anybody who is getting older will tell you, it just gets a lot harder to do stuff. For instance, there's difficulty when you're trying to turn your head, you know, when you want to look back and see who's, you know, in your blind spot, which is why those devices now that warn you when something's there are so great. Sometimes it's difficult to turn the wheel or to even brake or to move those feet from the gas pedal to the brake. Arthritis will obviously affect how you operate a car because your joints are a lot stiffer. Sometimes we have trouble noticing when there are horns or sirens or other noises, and sometimes also a difficulty in hearing any kind of a warning. The problem is actually much more acute for folks who live in rural areas. And again, people are not opting to move to a city. they tend to want to stay where they are living or where there are family. So in a rural area, the problems for folks who are 65 and older is much more acute. The first is access to transportation alternatives. It's not like we have a transit system in a rural area or an extensive bus system. So if you want to go to the doctor or to a grocery store or even out, to socialize, it's much more difficult. How are you going to get there? And so oftentimes what happens is older people will drive for much longer than they probably should just so they can get to some vital services. Condition of the roads in a lot of rural areas is also something that's different. There are a lot of two-way roadways. Our shoulders are not as wide. There's a lot of gravel. If you run off the road, sometimes in a rural area, there's no place really to recover. So again, how the roadways are makes it a little riskier for people who are already suffering for some risk. Signage sometimes out in a rural community can be smaller. You have to almost get right up to it to be able to see it. Not a lot of lighting in a rural area. It can be pretty dark out there if you're driving at night. And then there's the problem in some rural communities that are undergoing a lot of development. I mean, you can drive in an area one day and, a month later it is completely different. And obviously this confuses anybody, but for someone who is older and is suffering from maybe some cognitive decline, it gets even scarier. So for rural communities, we need to figure out some ways that we can help this population. Our next speaker is going to talk more about these potential solutions because Florida really has developed a pretty comprehensive program. But we can be looking at those kind of infrastructure improvements, and I've just listed some here that Gail will talk about a little later. Another great program she'll mention is CarFit. If you don't do it in your state, I'd highly recommend it. Look at those alternative transportation options. If you're living in a rural community, oftentimes a church, a civic organization, might be able to provide some rides for people. Looking at the whole issue of how we license individuals who are 65 and older. Encourage people to do assessments. Take that self-assessment. There's tons of tools out there to do that and figure out where you are. And then also there are a lot of training opportunities. But these are just some of the things that we can do as we deal with our populations in rural communities of individuals who are 65 and older. And now I think I'm going to turn the time over to Gail because she's going to tell you how Florida has really taken on this issue and is really making some impressive gains. Gail?
Perfect. Thank you, Pam. At this time, before we move on to Gail, we are going to go stop for question and answer. So if anyone does have any questions, please put those into the chat pod on the left-hand side. And while we're waiting to see if you have questions, we have one for you. So the first question we have for you is, which of the following is true? In the next 4 years, people 65 plus will outnumber the children under 5 for the first time in history. The aging population will have a tremendous impact on transportation planning and design in coming years. Except for teens, aging population has the highest crash rate per mile driven. Aging drivers self-select driving times when risk is lower. Aging does impact our ability to drive safely, for example, hearing, sight, motor skills, cognitive functions, but it does at different rates and at different times. All of the above, none of the above, or I don't know, I don't remember. We'll give you just a few seconds to fill that out. And we do have one question over in the chat pod about the slide presentation being available. It is currently available down in the handouts in the bottom left-hand corner. It is the one entitled 2018-10-23 SC Rural Aging, and that's the PDF version of these slides that you can download now, and it will also be available on our website along with the streaming link when that is posted in about a week as well. So it does look like most people have filled out the poll question. I'm going to go ahead and broadcast those results. And Pam, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and address them, please.
The poll indicates, almost all of you indicated that it's all of the above. And that's absolutely the case. All of those things were some of the facts that we discussed when it comes to the aging road user population.
Okay, thank you very much. It looks like at this time I was going to say we don't have any questions, but it does look like one more is coming in, so we'll see if that comes in while I'm moving us over to the webinar. Okay, so it has not come in. We're going to go ahead and let Gail speak, and again, put any questions you may have in the chat pod over on the left-hand side, and when Gail is done and we pause again, we'll address any of those questions over there, whether they're for our first speaker or our second speaker. So Gail?
Good afternoon. I'm really very excited to be here and have this opportunity to talk to you guys about Florida's program and just to share some tips and some information of things that might be going around in other parts of the country, maybe even in your own state that you're not aware of. Okay, so I'm just going to focus on a few things, just, how we got started, what we're doing now, some little things that makes our program different, and again, also share some tips on how to develop a similar program in your own state. All right, so this probably looks familiar to a lot of people. You see these a lot, no matter what state we're in, we see these on our roadways, but you might not realize that they actually are out there, many of them, because of research that was done to improve the natural changes that happen to all of us that Pam was talking about. They've been out there, and there was a report that actually was released by TRB, Transportation Research Board, back in the early 90s. It's called Transportation and Aging Society, Improving Mobility and Safety for Older Persons. And from that, when that report was released, because Florida does have its share of an aging population even back then, we actually went out into communities. We had people in our office at McDonald's and just places where people gathered and really started to talk to them a lot about what they, older adults, what they wanted, what some problems were on the roadway. And so we came back and actually implemented a lot of these changes, and they became part of our DOT standards right away. So we increased our pavement markings from 4 inches to 6 inches wide. We used more pedestrian enhanced crosswalks. We used overhead street name signs with upper and lowercase lettering, more advanced street name signs, which is my personal favorite, traveling everywhere. And then we also have reflective pavement markers, which you see on the bottom right, and we use them to decrease the spacing from 80 feet to 40 feet. So we did a lot of those changes to help compensate for the natural changes Pam talked about, and especially vision, because that's actually, there's 90% of everything you need to process from the roadway actually comes from your eyes. So these were really good improvements to do. But we realized when we looked to the future, we were very lucky that our management did this and really felt like, the data that Pam was talking about, the projections. Well, in Florida, we are actually projected to, in the year 2030, to be over 25% of our population is going to be over the age of 65. And right now, in our latest data, we are at 19%, which is actually what the rest of the nation is going to be in 2030. So we needed to do something, and that was the reason why we changed. And so what we did back in 2004 is we actually established a position and a program in our office, and we started to do a little shift. We shifted from elder road user program, which was what it was called, to more aging road user program, because, aging is happening to all of us, and it's something that, as Pam mentioned, there's not one clear age. So it's just like it's a process, so we changed that mindset. And we also established a website, safeandmobileseniors.org. And with this site, we made it one place where we could actually go and put all of our information. We built also strong partnerships with departments of elder affairs and highway safety and motor vehicles, so we could look at the issue not just from the roadway, from community and from the driver as well. But really, while that was really good, it still wasn't enough. And so we actually, back in 2009, reached out to the Pepper Institute on Aging and Public Policy at Florida State University. And it was interesting because we were reading a report, an annual report, and talking about Florida's aging population, some of the key issues. And they were talking about, and healthcare and housing were in there, but transportation wasn't. And transportation is such a key to driving everybody to everywhere that we reached out and asked if they would be interested in partnering with us to form a statewide coalition. And so that is what we did. And we have about 27 member organizations to date, and they represent a lot of these logos you might recognize already. We have AARP and AAA on our coalition. We also have representation from each of our DOT districts, and that's important, so we have statewide impact. And we also have other offices of the DOT as well. So we have planning and design, a roadway design, and safety office in there as well, and transit. So having that representation really, really helped out. And then we do have our departments of, our Department of Health, which is good because there's a lot of health departments in every county and community. So that was a way to make sure that we reached them. And particularly for rural, it was important that we do have representation. While we have NPOs on there, we also have our regional planning councils, which are represented with a lot of our rural areas. And then we do have the Commission for Transportation Disadvantaged, and Florida has community transportation coordinators in every county. And paratransit is actually something that is very key and usually the main source of transportation in a lot of our rural areas. And then we also have the Department of Economic Opportunity, and they're a really strong partner for rural because they do, while they have a department for community planning, they actually have a lot of rural community programs, including our Rural Economic Development Initiative, which is something that, that way we can make sure that what we were doing, and on our coalition we have representation from rural areas as well. So all these agencies and organizations, they all share a common bond. They all share something, whether it's working with older adults, working in safety and mobility. But, all of us, while individually we were working great, it's really by having a statewide coalition, it enabled us to do even more. So one of the first things we had to do is define who an aging road user was. And this was very important for us to do at the beginning, so we knew who we were talking about. And we go beyond, we do say the aging road user is not just the driver, but a passenger, pedestrian, bicyclist, transit rider, motorcyclist, or an operator of a non-motorized vehicle, also known as golf carts here in Florida, who is over the age of 50, with a special emphasis on the 65-year-old age group. And we do that because the 50-year-olds, and remember our coalition partners is AARP, so that's who their audience is, but also because we feel like we need to, if we're going to change behavior, that we need to do it between the 50 and 64. So that's why we do want to target people and get people to just start thinking about the message earlier. And then it's important that the 65, that we have that special emphasis there because because that is also what NHTSA does for their data. So that defines an older driver. So that's why we call out 65. And it was very important too, and just this could also be, come up as a tip, but it was really important for us to align our strategic plan with Florida's transportation plan, as well as our strategic highway safety plan. And it's really important because all of these plans actually address both the rural and the urban areas. But the Florida Transportation Plan actually has goal areas under transportation choices and quality places that have actually similarities to a lot of the stuff that we're doing for older adults. And the Strategic Highway Safety Plan has an aging road user emphasis area. So it was really important for us to kind of flow our plan from theirs, and for two reasons, the benefits. One of them is funding, just so projects, it could be easier for funding to kind of align, but also with implementation, because a lot of times what we're asking organizations or locals to do, it's easier if everything aligns. So it's like, well, if I work on this, then it could also help benefit the Strategic Highway Safety Plan or the FTT. So that was really important that we wanted to do that. But our plan is actually the main thing that we are trying to do is we want to improve the safety and mobility and reduce the crash rates, but we want to get people to maintain their safe mobility and connection to the community. So that's really important, and that drives what our message is. We have a very strategic and collaborative approach in our plan. We actually, the ones on the right, we consider everybody has their own responsibilities and roles in safe mobility for life. So older adults, families and caregivers, law enforcement, healthcare providers, community, aging service providers, and engineers and planners, all working together. They all are stakeholders and have unique needs. So we need to make sure that in our plan we do address that. And we also, it's a very comprehensive issue. So it's very important in our plan that we have 6 focus areas, and each of them are very important. And they each have their own goals, objectives, and strategies, and are actually led by coalition members in the areas that they are expertise in. So we do have, program management, data and evaluation, and I call that out only because it's really important that everything we do, we're always looking at the data. We might not always be looking just at the crash data. We're also looking at kind of like our outreach distribution data, or anything that we do, what the licensing is, or any information. We kind of look at it to make sure we get our materials into the right places. And we evaluate every program and resource that we do develop. Outreach and advocacy is very important, along with aging in place, which is really ties into a lot of the community, and is actually where the DOT program started. That's where that comes into play. We want to have a lot more lifelong communities. Prevention and assessment is extremely important, as well as licensing and enforcement and transitioning from driving. So each of these, like I said, they all have focus area team members compiled to coalition members and are led by a coalition member. I'm just pointing out some of the things I say unique. There are a lot of programs that are doing things similar, or I just felt like these are the things that kind of make us a little different in what works for us. So really, we do have a very positive approach and message. It was very important that we develop that, and because it is about aging, it is happening to all of us. It is about people getting to and from the places they need and want to go safely. That we have a very active and engaged coalition. We're very fortunate. We have a comprehensive website, and print materials are extremely important. It's important that we do have resources for all stakeholders, and I'll talk a little bit, I'll share some of them with you in a few minutes. And then it's important that we address the needs of both the urban and the rural areas. So one of the things that we did when we developed our strategic plan is we did focus areas, group testing. We wanted to go to those areas and hear what the issues were. And it was the issues of everyone, both in rural and urban areas, that drive everything that we do and the decisions that we make. And again, we use a lot, like I said, we use data and evaluation for the programs and the materials. So we're a positive message. I shared that we have this strategic plan, and really an aging road user strategic safety plan is very dry, and it's just not, people are going to get confused on really what it is. So we as a coalition, and again, this is everybody coming together, which makes it so fantastic. We came up with our message, and these are the keys to achieve safe mobility for life. We want people to understand the impact that aging has on driving. We want them to be proactive about how they can stay safe as drivers now, and then we also want them to plan for a safe transition. So if you do all these 3 things together, that you can truly have safe mobility for life, whether you're driving or not. So some tips and information on our coalition. One of the things, I guess I also call these kind of lessons learned, because we have been doing these for a while, but I'd have to say consistent communications and a place to share information is got to be like a #1 thing. You've got groups and organizations that have different email systems, different calendars, and it just, trying to get everybody on the page, and let's not even mention firewalls. It was extremely challenging. So we did, the last couple of years, we've been using a project management tool called Basecamp, and it's just a way, and others can find ones that work for them, but for us, we really kind of like the setup of it and the communication. So it is just that one place that you can put all the information so people can pop in when they can and when they need to. Because it's really important with the coalition to keep in mind when you have, another thing that drives every meeting and every discussion is that everyone has full-time jobs and responsibilities doing something else. But they're there because of a reason. They're group, but they're also really there because of their interest in this issue. So what we've done is we've established a member handbook to kind of just like lay out the rules of the road, kind of expectations, again, putting things all in one place, trying to make it, again, easy for people when they pop in to find out information, and it keeps everything moving along. And then we also empower the team members and the leaders. We really, I'm going to give you an example of that in a few minutes, but it's really important at our meetings that we started having breakout sessions where the teams met on their own, and actually they meet before meetings, and I'm not on those calls. It's just a way to kind of get those teams to kind of own the issues because they're the experts that are on it in that particular area. So just a little bit, this is our website that we developed. It's safemobilityfl.com, and one of the things that you'll notice is the name change is different. It went from safeandmobileseniors.org and to Safe Mobility FL, which is really a way for people to really just kind of connect that message even more. And it is connected to our the message. You'll see the understand, be proactive, and plan. And again, we just want to have one place where everything can go together. But we realized that, especially something that we learned in our rural areas, you can't put everything up on your website. And even though, it's a great place to have one place to put things, it's not the place for everyone. So we created Florida's Guide for Aging Drivers, and it's a great example of collaboration because we actually, I had met with Tennessee DOT, and they had two guides that they were using. One was for aimed at drivers, and then one was for families and caregivers. And what we did after we saw their information was like, this is good, but we wanted to make it Florida specific, and we wanted to kind of combine it into one. So kind of reached out and asked if that would be good, and they're like, that's great. And so we created Florida's Guide for Aging Drivers. And this is, now I actually can tell you that there are other states that have done similar. So after we presented on this, Michigan used it to develop their own Michigan guide. Maryland did the same, and Colorado as well. Those are the ones that I know of. So it's really a great example of kind of sharing information and moving, to make it work for your own communities. So the guide has actually talked a lot about the impact that aging has on driving. Gives it in more detail. It's written very consumer-friendly to older adults, and it breaks it down also to give specific information on keeping safe while driving, so you can actually learn to see where your driver safety courses, the approved ones, are listed in there. CARFIT is talked about in there. And then we also talk about the importance of planning for life after driving, giving some tips and planting that seed. And it also provides access to local resources. So in the back, we have for every county listed. We show the area agency on aging as well as our community transportation coordinator. So that's really just a way to be able to do that. And most recently, while the guide is available in hard copy, free to anybody, we also have it up on our website as in a PDF that can be downloaded. We released it as an ebook, and it's also available in Spanish. Right now, we're getting ready to revise it and launch it again in 2019. We're making more changes to it. And we've also actually, every time we do it, we send out a survey to the people that have already ordered them and get some really good feedback from them on what's missing in there. So we put that in there in every revision. Another resource I just wanted to briefly mention is that we do have, in looking at communities, we wanted to make it easy for people to start thinking about how they can get around, what's important to them to have in their community so they can successfully age in place. So this checklist that we developed is broken into 4 areas: community design, getting around, street safety, and security, and support services and social programs. And we actually put them all, ask simple questions, get people to think about what's in their community, because everybody has their own personal mobility needs, where they want to go. And so you can kind of fill out this checklist and then see where your community stands. And it's also just a really good gauge for communities as well to see some of the features that should be in there. So we launched another site, and this is collaboration with our University of Florida. It's actually, we created this one-stop shop for finding transportation options, and we could, it's findarideFlorida.org, and we try to make it simple where people can actually put in where they're traveling from, where they're going to, and it sorts it out and gives them an alphabetical listing of all the resources that are available to them. And we're making even more changes on them. We're actually going to be making the community transportation coordinators and the results float up to the top and be able to include, make it easier for people to find. And then we also have some companion, again, going back to not only having things on the web, you have to have print materials. We developed just a little tip cards that walk people through it and give them, just kind of let them know what their options are available, because people might not drive if they actually knew how else they could get around. And the site actually does link and show if Uber is available there and different options as well. We try to do volunteer driver programs. Again, anything that we know that's available, we try to put it in there. So this is really good for communities. We look to them to help tell us what are some resources that are available. But we know that driving is not the only way, so we're actually have developed a series of brochures on how to use other transportation options in Florida. And actually, while it says in Florida, and a lot because of the pictures too, we developed these by actually, there's specific questions that we heard people asking on maybe why they weren't using transit or how to use a transportation network company such as Uber or Lyft. And we actually created these brochures to answer those questions. The brochures were also designed, we've done a human factors research project where we did specific research on how to communicate educational materials with older adults. So these were our first ones that we did in this format. So we really like it. It's just a way to kind of, give that other options, give them more information. So again, this is available to anybody who is interested in seeing it. And so I just wanted to touch a little bit on the resources for stakeholders. We recently released a law enforcement video. And this is a really good example, again, going back to having a coalition of when we have a licensing and enforcement team. It was that team, along with our prevention and assessment, that sat down and pretty much said the content of what we needed to have. What did they want to see? What did law enforcement officers need? We did survey to our law enforcement across the state to kind of gauge what they needed, and then we just listened to them to see what is it that we could develop. And we were very fortunate, again, this is another example of collaboration, as we reached out because MITSA has law enforcement videos that are available, and also Maryland. They have recently did, a couple of years ago, they did a law enforcement video. And they were very generous in giving us the B-roll, and we were able to marry it with Florida-specific information, and we were able to develop these resources. And like I said, it really just goes back to, again, collaboration with other states, but then also, you know, among the coalition members. They were the ones that came up and said exactly what the content is, had the buy-in. So what you see is actually a really kind of that, you know, the great example of a coalition developing the resources that are needed. So just a few little tips. I think my number one tip is just you have to remain flexible in the program. We have a very large, not just coalition membership, but then also a plan. So there's a lot of moving parts. And sometimes something that you think you're going to do, a couple meetings later, you change direction and then you changed it for the best. Just an example is last year at Older Driver Safety Awareness Week, we did an outreach campaign. And we were out in the community talking about the program, and you know, we had our logo, it was the Safety is Golden, and it was a morning show, was doing an interview, and they kept saying, safety's golden, safety's golden, safety's golden, and it hit me, it's like, we're missing that piece. It's the safe mobility. It's a lot about the mobility, not just about the safety. So we actually, that's when we changed our logo that you see on the slides. We changed to Safe Mobility for Life to really kind of, you know, take the focus not just on the driver, but also on the other nodes as well. So then also, you know, building and maintaining partnerships, not just the coalition members, partners there, but your community partners and other stakeholders as well. In the community, you guys know these are your neighbors and your friends. And so if we can kind of pull together the resources and be able to share it, I think that's what's going to really, truly, you know, make a difference. And then just the focus on safety, access, and mobility. I think that's just extremely important. It's not just about the safety. It is about the others as well. Those are extremely important. And then to just develop and distribute a positive and consistent message. I think that's one of the things that we've been fortunate with, is that people just know it's something about the cars, and it's tied to independence, and people can be scared. But if we kind of make this more positive in this approach, that we've seen a better, you know, tie-in and understanding that we're not here to take a license, we're here to actually help people get around safely. And I just wanted to leave you with just these three things. Just always remember that there is no specific age when normal physical, cognitive, or visual changes can affect safe driving skills. That's why it's just so important for everything that we do now can help everybody. And the resources and educational materials that you write and develop for an older adult can benefit everyone. So any of the things, like if we think about those roadway improvements that are out there on the roadway, they're helping everyone. And a lot of people don't even know they started from older driver research. And the last thing is that you're not alone. I really feel like collaboration is key, and there are resources that are available to you. A lot of times it is just that we're not aware of it, but they are available to you, and to take advantage of them. And I was just going to close it out with, we do have my buddy, Nanette Sheikey, who works in Maryland's Department of Transportation and their Motor Vehicle Administration. We actually met over a cup of coffee at TRB one year and just started talking about what are some of the things that we faced. And we formed this kind of grassroots group. We have a very long name, but it's basically a collaboration group of all the state program managers, the ones that are actually working in this area. And we meet quarterly via GoToMeeting, and we utilize Basecamp as well, and we just use it as information sharing. Just exactly what I did here today. To date, we have 22, well, actually, according to this picture, we have 22, but yesterday we got 23. We actually had someone from Oregon join as well. So, if you see your state in blue and you'd like to know who your contact person is in your state, please let me know. And if your state is in white and you know somebody that is managing their aging road user program and would like to be join us, please just let me know as well. So that is it. I'm ready if you guys got questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Gail. And just again, for everyone who does have questions, please put those in the chat pod on the left-hand side. There are quite a few over there, and we'll get to those in just a few minutes. But first, we have another question for you guys. This is a true or false question. Florida DOT's overall goal is to reduce crash, serious injury, and fatality rates for a growing aging population. True or false? We'll just give everyone a few seconds. And along with the questions that are coming up in the chat pod, there is a mention that the PDF link for the Florida guide may have changed. And so there is a link that someone posted over in the chat pod as well, in case anyone is interested in downloading that. Okay, and Gail, at this time it does look like everyone has done the poll question, so I'll ask you to go ahead and talk about that, please.
Well, the answer is true. 95% of you got that. And it is, no matter what we're doing or developing in our plan, the overall goal is to reduce the crash, serious injury, and fatality rates. We have a huge challenge because of our aging population and the rate that we are growing, but that is our overall goal.
Okay, and it looks like our first question for you is, why are golf carts considered non-motorized?
That's a good question. They are for us. We have low-speed vehicles that aren't, but the ones that are not on the roadway system are considered non-motorized.
Your next question is, have crashes decreased since your program was implemented?
I wish I could. The number one thing is that we want to get to zero. And it's our rate that is decreasing. We're noticing that our population, it's such a challenge because our population is increasing so dramatically. I think when we started, we were at 15%, and now we're at 19%. So that's just is our challenge. But we really feel like with all the changes that we've made lately and are doing even more, we really want to see those numbers go down. So I hope to be able to come back and share that.
The next question for you is, how do you convince county and local jurisdictions to improve their pavement markings?
They did. I mean, I'd have to go back because that was just something it did. I believe it was changes in the METCV, which is the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. We made the change for our pavement markings within 2 years. So the DOT kind of committed to that and changed it all. But, you know, that's just that, like I said, that happened way back in the 90s, so I have to do a little bit of research on that one.
If I may, this is Pam Beer. One of the things you did do, Gail, is you did do trainings for engineers and planners, you know, on how they can make communities more friendly to aging road users.
Yeah, and you know, another good example of that is we had one community that wanted to come and they wanted us to take our advanced street name signs down off of our roadway. And when we actually went to them, they were just adamant about them coming down. And so when we actually went to them and shared with them that those were actually a countermeasure to help an aging population based on the highway design handbook that was done by the Federal Highway Administration, they dropped it. So that really kind of was, you know, when you show them the research and the reasons you're doing it can really help.
The next one is more of a comment than a question. It's just reminding people that many of the oldest drivers don't use computers, so to keep that in mind while developing your programs. And I know, Gail, you spoke about that a little bit, that you need to make sure that along with having a website, you have some of your brochures and information available in other ways other than computers as well.
Yes, everything of ours is available in print, and that's exactly the reason. A lot of times people will say, even our guide, we print them. And even though now we have it available in PDF and ebook, it's really to reach a 50 to 64 others. but we still print them, and they're ordered. So we just, it's something that we know is vital to this age group.
The next question for you is that it's hard to get drivers to change their behavior and easy for people to slip back into old habits. Have you been able to assess the long-term impacts of your program?
Right now our focus is with our guide changing as well. We're really developing materials to focus really in on the planning and the transitioning. We did focus groups for a workbook that we were going to be doing and on that particular subject, and we learned so much about how people feel about driving, and a lot of it has to do, a lot of people wanted to not drive, but it really was how else were they going to get to and from. So really kind of convincing and talking to people about other alternatives and having other options is, I think, going to be key in that. And as far as the long-term impacts, that's why our strategic plan and our performance measures, we plan on doing an annual report and really trying to tie everything in to make sure that what we're doing really works.
The next one is actually another shout out for Nanette, who started your coalition, so shout out for her again. And then the last question for you is, how do you measure your program's effectiveness?
So everything has different measurements. While we have, every year we do priority counties, so we look at all the crash, injury, and fatality rates. We look at that. We also look at where we're distributing our materials. Is there a difference somewhere else with maybe licensing? We're promoting ID cards. Maybe there's a reduction in licensing. Or even anything that we do, I didn't really touch on a lot of the outreach that we do. We have toolkits. We see whether or not anything we put out there, whether it's a social media campaign or any type of campaign, driving people to the website, and actually are people going there and doing it. So there's a lot. Everything has a component to it.
Okay, thank you very much, Gail. At this point, I'm trying to move us back over to our presentation. It's not showing on my screen. Dana, can you take a look at that and see if you can get it to come up, please?
Yes.
And then it does. It is up on your side?
I'll advance for Bruce.
Okay, perfect. We actually do have one more question that came in while we were doing that. They're wondering if there's a contact list by state. One of the states Robin's interested in, she says hers is in blue. So I believe you mentioned that she can contact you after the webinar to get that information?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. The very last slide, Robin, will have Gail's email address, and you can send her an email and she'll get you that contact. Okay, and next I'm going to turn it over to Bruce, and I am going to have Dana go ahead and move the slides. Bruce, can you confirm, can you move the slides as well? Are you able to see them?
Yes, I think so. Is that showing up for?
Yep, perfect, Bruce.
Okay,
right.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody, and thank you so much for your interest in this topic. My name is Bruce Hamilton. I'm the Director of Safety and Research Programs at the Roadway Safety Foundation in Washington, D.C., and I really want to thank you all for participating today, and to the Safety Center for inviting us to share our resources with you and putting this all together. Just a little bit of quick background. RSF, Roadway Safety Foundation, we're a charity in D.C. and we're focused on infrastructure and the built environment and sort of a public health orientation to injury prevention. We were chartered in 1995 by the American Highway Users Alliance, and we really look at safe systems and working with the Federal Highway Administration and others to share best practices and to promote safety of the nation's roads and roadsides, bridges, and operating conditions and that sort of thing. And one of our current projects is the Clearinghouse for Older Road User Safety, or CHORUS, which is a joint effort by NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and the Federal Highway Administration, which together sponsor this from each of their respective sides. So as I'm guessing most of you know, NHTSA focuses on behavioral issues and on vehicle safety, and Federal Highway focuses on our infrastructure and our road standards and that sort of thing. And RSF is most closely aligned with FHWA, and so we support Chorus as their cooperative agreement consultant, and we also manage the content on Chorus that relates to road design and things of that nature. And then on the NHTSA side, they focus on their areas of specialty on behavior and policy and vehicle safety, things like CARFIT that we've heard mentioned a couple times today. And then we've got multiple IT and communications groups that support the development of Chorus and its ongoing maintenance, and a panel of subject matter experts that has participated over the years in contributing content and in approving and sort of verifying content that we've had. And I'd like to thank Gail, who we just heard from, for being one of the SMEs, and I would also put in a plug for her that Roadway Safety Foundation and Federal Highway also gave her agency a National Roadway Safety Award a couple years back for their work in older driver safety. So we've very much appreciated working with Gail over the years. And Chorus was developed to serve as a comprehensive one-stop shop for resources and research pertaining to lifelong safe mobility. And I really do like what Florida was doing with emphasizing that, we're not really just talking about people of a certain age, that age isn't a good predictor of driving ability, that really we are talking about lifelong safe mobility for everyone, and so much of what we do with one group in mind is still nonetheless beneficial for all road users of all ages. And so Chorus is designed to be sort of a national level clearinghouse for anything related to this topic, and which is obviously a big scope, but we can see here that we view Chorus as relating to everything with highway safety. So whether it's the roadway, which is really the federal highway side, the vehicle, or the driver, which is more the NHTSA side, those are the three legs of the highway safety stool, and Chorus, our mission for it is to capture all of that. The audiences that it was originally designed for include highway engineers and road authorities, individual road users and the general public, caregivers and loved ones who are looking for resources to support somebody who might be transitioning out of driving, medical professionals, policymakers, and researchers, and others. This list isn't necessarily totally comprehensive, but in the lower right you can see this is just a screen grab from the main part of the site to show the content areas. And our goal here is really to get people, since we do want this to be useful for so many folks, to get people to the content that's relevant for them immediately. We don't want an older driver who's looking for licensing policies in their state or tips on fitness to drive to immediately be inundated with technical manuals from Federal Highway about designing roundabouts. So we try to get people segmented pretty quickly in a user-friendly way. So the 6 main content areas are safer roads, being a safer road user, safer vehicles, family and caregiver resources, research, and then the policy enforcement and medical fitness angle for professionals. These are just some examples of the resources that are available on Chorus. So we've got the design standards, best practices, certainly some of what we've heard already from the previous speakers are promoted there. Educational resources and self-assessments and tips. We've got articles and web links, state-by-state laws and policies, alternative transportation options. There is a blog, social media, and community forum that is designed to promote engagement, as well as an events calendar. I'll note now that certainly anybody is welcome to sign up for an account on Chorus, or to email me, or to use the Chorus contact us form to send us content ideas or events that you'd like us to include on the events calendar. It's a very open process, and even though it's a relatively large and at times unwieldy team that is working on this, all of that actually just comes to the Roadway Safety Foundation. And so if you do have a specific suggestion or something you'd like to see, I can assure you that will not get lost in in any kind of shuffle that really does just come to one central location. This is an example of what you can see, how you can search for resources. So you can see that we do have an interactive map. So if you have a specific state that you're interested in, you can go right there. And then on the right, you can also search for resources by category. So again, those 6 main categories that I mentioned earlier, and then by resource type. So we have things that are coded as video or as highway manuals or as state laws or things of that nature. And so you can look for categories of resource types as well. And then just to sort of give a preview of what's coming, Chorus has been developed over the past couple of years under a cooperative agreement with Federal Highway on our end, as well as some contracts on the NHTSA end. And we're sort of now ready to take the next step. And one of the reasons I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you is that we're really looking now to grow the user base and to make Chorus the mature online resource that we really have as a vision for it. So NHTSA and Federal Highway are both now sort of increasing their commitment to this project and their involvement. And there's some new agreements and awards that are being made to support its development. And there'll be an enhanced focus on social media engagement and dynamic content. So now that the framework is there and the functionality for the site is really strong, now we want to take it to the next level. On our end, on the Roadway Safety Foundation end, we've got a new partnership with CBS's Pro Social group in Chicago, who will be developing 30-second vignettes that will be aired in medical offices and waiting rooms, developing some TV spots, and linking up with an AARP campaign, and as well as direct email marketing. And they have committed about to delivering for us about 3 million impressions for promoting Chorus this fall and to help us launch this expansion. And as I mentioned earlier, and I know that our contact information is included in a couple of places throughout this webinar, but this is the Roadway Safety Foundation and my contact information, and Chorus is a roadway safety part of our portfolio of work, and so you're always welcome. If you do have questions or anything you'd like to see, you're always welcome to contact us or to go directly to roadsafeseniors.org, which is where Chorus lives, and use the Contact Us form there. And I believe that is all that I have at the moment, but of course happy to take questions and talk about the poll question that I know is coming.
Yep, perfect. Thank you very much. One more time. We will take any remaining questions that you guys have. You can put them in the chat pod on the left-hand side. I do see a few coming in right now. In the meantime, we're going to ask you guys one more question. So which of the following resources are available on Chorus? Design standards and best practices, educational resources and self-assessments, useful tips, articles and web links, state laws and policies, alternative transportation options, blog, social media, and community forum, events calendar, all of the above, none of the above, or I don't know, I don't remember. I'll give everyone just a few seconds to fill that out. Okay, and at this time, Bruce, it does look like everyone filled that out. I've broadcasted the results for you.
And it looks like everyone filled it out correctly, yes. This has been designed from the beginning to be as comprehensive as possible. So all of those things and other types of resources can be found there. And we're always looking to add more.
Perfect. This first question, I'm not sure, Bruce, if you'd like to address this or if someone else would be a better fit, so I'll let you decide that. But
well, I'm thinking that question is probably not for me, maybe for Gail.
Gail. Yeah, so Gail, we'll ask you this one, and if you don't know, maybe Pam does. So the question is, are there efforts to improve state wet weather friction monitoring?
I don't know that answer. And that's a different office than ours too, so I would be more than happy to follow up if with another office.
Gail, this is Pam. The only thing that I know of is all states do monitor roadways through their road weather monitoring program, but I don't think that looks at friction. I think that's a maintenance question.
So Richard, if you would like us to follow up on that question, if you can put your email address in the chat pod and we'll get that to Gail so that she can get you some additional information. Another question that came in for you, Gail, is what activities work best in rural communities?
You know, I think all of our activities, like I'm thinking like even our events that we do, whether it's a workshop, you know, we've done pedestrian workshops in rural and urban. They're just really well received. I think it's just knowing your audience ahead of time and being familiar with the area that's important. So going in there knowing what some of their options are already is very helpful. And I think, again, one of the resources we have is a family and caregiver brochure that actually we know there's a really strong impact on families in more rural areas because they are usually providing the rides. So, so that's just, you know, just one of them. But I really think that the way we try to do it is anything that we do, we try to develop for both rural and urban at the same time.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And we did have a friend from Alaska DOT answer that last question, and he says that pavement performance measures required for state reporting by FHWA may include friction. I'm going to give everyone just a few more seconds. It looks like we have some questions coming through. Again, this will be our last question and answer period. And it looks like it may have gone away for now, so I am going to go through the next couple slides. If it does show back up in the question chat pod, I will go ahead and ask you guys that when it shows up there. So learning outcomes. In this webinar, you guys have learned to understand the nature and extent of the aging road user population, to summarize Florida DOT's Aging Road User Program approach and implementation strategies, and to restate the resources available in the Clearinghouse for older road user safety. So I do want to let everyone know that we do have a couple more webinars for 2018 that are coming up. Hopefully you guys all joined us for part 1 of our Rural Roadway Departure Countermeasures, which happened at the beginning of October. If you were unable to join us for that, it is now available on our website on our archived webinars page. Part 2 will be happening on Tuesday, November 13th from 11 to 12:30 Mountain Time, and that one will cover roadway curve marking and signing and high friction surface treatments. Part 3 will happen on Thursday, December 20th, also from 11 to 12:30 Mountain Time, and will cover clear zone treatments and roadside hardware. I do want to remind everyone as well that the Safety Center and the National Association of County Engineers are co-hosting the second National Summit on Rural Road Safety. It will be held December 4th through the 6th in Savannah, Georgia. The registration for this, the early registration will be closing the second week in November, and the first week in November, our hotel room block will be done. So please, if you're going to attend that, please get registered as soon as possible to make sure you can take advantage of the low hotel costs and the early registration price. Along with having the summit for a day and a half of presentations and working sessions, we will also be having several training workshops that will occur. There will be CEUs available for this entire summit. On the on the afternoon of Tuesday, we will be doing a safety culture training. And then on Wednesday morning, you'll have the choice between low-cost safety improvements and systemic safety training. And then Wednesday afternoon, we'll start the summit, having a bunch of organizations talk about different solutions that are out there for rural road safety. And then on Thursday, we will have our working group sessions all day. There will be 5 sessions in the morning to choose from and 5 sessions in the afternoon to choose from on a variety of rural road safety topics. So we do hope that you guys will all join us for that. And then, as I did promise before, the contact information for our speakers is provided right here. And before I sign us off, we did have that one last question come back in. So I'm going to ask this one. What about older drivers who will not give up driving until they or someone else are hurt?
I think, this is Gail, the families and caregivers brochure that I spoke about is one resource we developed. It gives tips on having the conversation, the right ways to do it, what to say, what not to say, but also thinking about how they're getting from place to place. I think there is going to be people that either live independently or some people that suffer from dementia who don't think they have a problem. That oftentimes contributes. So I really feel like we're just trying to develop and to communicate as many resources and information as we can to help, to help everybody be able to.
And Gail, your website has good some resources that people can use, just a conversation to follow, correct?
Yes. There's under the resources for up at the top, we do have some specifically for families and caregivers, and you can actually see the brochure right there. Download it.
Perfect. And
this
that's
is
a great
Bruce from a slightly different angle. I know that one of my former colleagues at the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, Brian Teft, has done some good research on state policies and what makes an effective state policy. So again, sort of going a little bit upstream from the end user and the family member who's getting into sort of a tough situation, but what can be done at the policy level to improve safety for everybody.
And speaking of all the resources that are available and the other people to contact as well, I do want to remind everyone one more time that there are handouts down in the left-hand corner, and this does provide a tip sheet, the traffic safety fact sheet, Florida DOT's Aging Safety Plan, as well as the PDF of the presentation for today. We also did get a comment in from Montana Department of Transportation who says the Hartford agency also has a great resource, and also you can have a conversation with the family doctor or do a DMV assessment as well. So with that, I do want to thank all three of our speakers, Pam, Gail, and Bruce. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise today on the aging road user, and thank you to everyone who joined us. We do appreciate it. Have a great afternoon, everybody.